let's get started. So first of all, the EST Interlip Working Group was established in June this year by the Interlip Executive Committee in order to convene a community consultation with WCG on the impact of transformation on newcomers and newcomer services ecosystem in Toronto. The group members represent 20 different organizations at this point, as well as employment action group leads of the 4 LIPs and the Toronto Newcomer office. First meeting of this group was held on July 30th, and at that meeting, the importance of informing WCG about newcomer inclusion in the new service model was stressed by the members of the group. Now, having said that, also following July 30th, I, as a coordinator of this Interlip work group, met with WCG, and what we realized is that the members of the work group, as well as the wider sector, needed to first be informed about the transformation. Where is it at? And what's happening, what they can expect in order to be able to inform WCG about the landscape from the newcomer perspective. So that is how this information session came about, and that's why we're all here today. By the way, if you do have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat at any point. There will be time for questions and answers towards the end, and we will be monitoring the chat. And I'll pull questions from the chat when the Q&A piece starts. So don't be shy and include those. All right, moving on. So a little bit about Toronto, people, work, and economy. And if you are not muted, please do mute yourself just to reduce the noise. So in Toronto, 3 million people live. This does not include the GTHA. This is just Toronto proper. Of those people, 53% are 15 years old or older. So that they're considered to be able to work. And there are 1,620,000 and 900,000 jobs in Toronto with a vacancy of 3%, meaning that at the end of every month, 3% of those jobs are unfilled. And the unemployment rate for Toronto as of July this year is 7.5%. The employment rate is 60%. Now, it took me a while to wrap my head around this number. That means that out of the people who are of core working age, 60% of them actually participate in the workforce, are working currently. And 76.8% of those are working in full-time jobs. 23% work in part-time jobs in Toronto. And it's interesting to note that more men work in full-time jobs than women, and more women work in part-time jobs than men. In Toronto, there are 72,530 establishments, meaning places of work, and they're primarily in sales and services industry, business, finance, and administration. So think about banks, insurance companies, as well as education, schools, law, social, community, and government services. So those are the types of establishments that are predominant in Toronto. But in terms of the types of jobs that people actually do, we have 14% working in professional, scientific, and technical services, 11% in healthcare and social services, and 9% in retail trade. Toronto population is well educated, with almost 50% of people working age holding a bachelor degree. 18.7% having a graduate degree, 19% have a high school diploma, and 9% do not have a high school diploma. So these are 7.6, Lauren is correcting me, yes, unemployment rate. Okay, that's no problem for Toronto.
Sorry, it was a response to someone else, sorry.
That's okay. It fluctuates. This was taken from Toronto Economic Dashboard, but you're absolutely right. It does move. So moving on to where is this employment situated in Toronto? It's actually dictated in large part by the Toronto official plan. And Toronto official plan designates areas of employment, and you can see them here in purple. The areas of employment are designated for businesses and employment purposes, and they account for 25% of all employment in the city and 30% of all businesses. Now, to see how that's actually distributed across the city. So now if you look at the areas that are in blue, you can see the actual concentration. So what you saw earlier is just the designation as employment zone, whereas this is how the job concentration in these zones. So the top 5 areas of employment are Rexdale around the airport, South Etobicoke, Downsview, Highway 400, and Tapscott. Each have more than 29,000 jobs, and together they have nearly half of all employment in Toronto. And manufacturing was the leading employment within these areas of employment with 19.6% in 2023. So that's a little bit about Toronto economic landscape and people in Toronto. And now when it comes to newcomers, we have over 50% of, it's not 50%, but it is actually 50%, but these are the most recent numbers I got. So 1,286,140 newcomers in Toronto, 26.6 of whom arrived within between 2011 and 2021. So they're considered more recent immigrants. And more women are immigrants than men overall in Toronto. Now, interestingly, whereas 53% of Toronto population are of working age, 70% of all immigrants are 15 plus, so of working age. So it's a much more labor participation ready population. And this number has grown. If we look at it, if we adjust it to 25 plus and older, the number in 2021 grew to almost 90% of all immigrants coming in, recent immigrants were 25 years and older. So very much a labor pool. What we also need to know that is in Toronto, there are slightly more established immigrants than recent immigrants, 7.4 more established immigrants, those who arrived in the 90s, that includes me and many of us on this call, than the recent immigrants. Nevertheless, Toronto is fairly good at retaining its immigrants. 67% of immigrants in Ontario in 2021, immigrants to Ontario in 2021 settled in Toronto. And 10 years later, we're not at this point yet, but if we go 10 years back, Toronto has retained 82.1% of its immigrants who settled 10 years or longer ago. In terms of the countries of origin, 53% come from Asia, from those countries, and Philippines being the top country with 10.3% in Toronto, China next, and India following. Okay, moving on to a little bit more about immigrants. 54% have a bachelor degree compared to 49% for entire Toronto, which includes immigrants as well. And 30%, almost half, twice as many have STEM credentials as non-immigrants in Toronto. Newcomers' field of study primarily are in business, engineering, and healthcare. Nevertheless, their unemployment rate, especially for younger immigrants who, not younger, but more recent immigrants who arrived 5 years ago or earlier, is 12.6% compared to 7.5% for everybody in Toronto. And they have a gap in median age of 20%. So they earn 20% less than non-immigrants in Toronto. There is also a problem with overqualification, which is that reflected in the fact that 15.9% of immigrants and even higher percentage of recent immigrants in Ontario, this is not data for Toronto, but for Ontario, with a university degree hold a position requiring no more than a high school education versus the same stats for non-immigrants being at 9.6, which is also not great. But again, immigrants having more of an overqualification challenge in the labor market. Now, in terms of newcomer profiles, they're also determined by the pathway into the country. And when it comes to the pathway into the country, the most predominant way that newcomers come into the country is as economic immigrants. And there are three pathways they can use to enter: Canadian experience, federal skilled worker, and federal skilled trade. Canadian experience is a relatively new pathway for immigrants to come in, and it necessitated bringing in a large amount of temporary residents into the country, because it's built on the premise that people will have prior Canadian work or education experience before applying to come in as permanent residents through Canadian experience class. And this diagram shows what that increase in the number of temporary residents. In just 1 year, the number of temporary residents in Toronto grew from just under 50,000 to almost 200,000, whereas the number of people with permanent residence grew by a little bit less than 50,000 over the same time period. If we look at it more historically, we can see that green economic immigrants dominates, but has shrunk in relation to, well, this is partially because of the COVID at the end, so we can't really speak to these numbers. However, if we break down the economic immigrants, the green bar, into skilled workers, skilled trades, and Canadian experience class, we can see that the skilled workers and trades has declined, or trades is just down here, it's barely getting off the zero line, but the skilled workers has declined, whereas the Canadian experience class, people that have become permanent residents through that class, has been steadily on the rise. And when it comes to refugees, so people who come into the country because they're fleeing circumstances in their own countries, we can see that government-assisted refugees who are brought into the country by Canada has declined over time. And but the protected persons, so those are people who come into the country and apply for refugee claim, has skyrocketed, dipped, and is now on the rise again. And this is reflected by the current situation in Toronto shelters, where the number of refugee claimants grew by 500% in 20 months, from 530 per night in September 2021 to more than 2,800 per night in May 2023. Currently, there are 35,000 refugee claimants on Ontario Works, and they represent 36% of the entire Ontario Works caseload in Toronto. And what that looks like is that on average, for example, in July, there were 2,400 new refugee claimant clients on Ontario Works within just 1 month. So what does this tell us? It sort of paints a picture of a little bit about newcomers and the different immigration classes, so that we can start to imagine the different profiles of newcomers that are emerging as a result of immigration pathways and newcomer characteristics overall. In terms of Toronto newcomer service landscape, there are 251 employment providers for newcomers specifically in Toronto, 275 service providers for settlement for newcomers, and 170 organizations that provide language training to newcomers. When it comes to funding landscape, which is also important, there's a lot of overlap among these service providers. But when it comes to who's funding those services, IRCC allocates 446 million settlement funding to 217 SPOs in Toronto. And that's this blue number, this blue circle. It's represented, that's sort of like visually the size. Ministry of Immigration, Labor, Skills Development and Training funds newcomer settlement programs. This is it's 14 million. So that is the smaller circle here. And this is the NSP program. I believe it also includes the language training, which is issued, this funding is issued to 46 service providers in Toronto. 1 billion annually, however, is the big circle here, which is the budget for Employment Ontario. And I'm not saying that that's the, and this is not in Toronto only. This is, and you know, WCG can jump in here, but I tried to find what is the size of EO funding, because it is the largest and most stable funding that we've had for employment that newcomers can also take advantage of. And then finally, Toronto Employment Social Services has so far up to date provided $24 million to 240 service providers to deliver employment training and skill development programs to Ontario Works clients. But this funding is in transition, and these programs are also in transition at this time as a result. So I'm sure there's going to be questions. I will provide the slides and the references for where I found this information. But at this point, what I would like to do is stop sharing and give the floor to WCG to tell us about themselves and about WCG, about transformation. So please go ahead and share your slides.
Thank you so much. Before we share the slides, we can start with a bit of an introduction for those of us on the team. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a community integration specialist with WCG. My background is in hospitality and social services, providing wraparound supports to Ontario Works clients. Oh, that's a great question. WCG is just WCG right now. It originally was West Coast Group when the company was only operating on the West Coast. But now that we're Canada-wide, it's just WCG. Yeah, and born and raised here in North York, and that's the quadrant I'll be serving, North York. All right. Sarah?
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Brooks. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm also one of the community integration specialists here at WCG. My background is largely in education, as well as supporting youth from the BIPOC community and in areas of community development and education. And I'll pass it over to Chantal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chantal. I am the newest member of the Community Integration Specialist team, so really excited to be here with you all. I'm based in downtown Toronto, but I will be serving the Etobicoke quadrant. My background is in international and community development, qualitative research. I've primarily focused on issues of domestic violence, how we prevent domestic violence and whatnot. So I'm excited to be here with you all. Thank you so much.
And I'm Salima Tijani, Senior Manager of Community Integration and Municipal Partnerships. So nice to be here today and meet you all. Sarna, I do want to just share that Louise cannot get back in. So if you can please let her in. She's our first speaker, so it's important she's here. I joined WCG 4 years ago, right when we were joining, or we got the contract for Peel Prototype. And I come from the newcomer settlement sector. I worked in federal space for 15 years prior to joining WCG. So it was really great to hear some of the stats and some of the work that the LIP is doing and all the service providers and settlement organizations are doing. For newcomer clients, we're very excited to share our integrated employment services model today. And see how we can collectively work together and really use all of our expertise and experience to really make a difference in the lives of newcomers and get them into sustainable employment. In the presentation today, we'll also highlight a little about the work that we've done for refugees and asylum claimants in Peel region and York region. Just to provide some highlight of the work, as well as what's coming in the future to work with this client group. So thank you about that. And I'm not sure if Louise is here.
I'm waiting for Louise to come back. She's not in the room. So what I'm going to do is just send her the link so she can join. Okay, hopefully that will work.
In the meantime, I'll go ahead and introduce myself quickly. Sorry, my voice is a little bit absent today, but my name is Kadesha Winslow, member of the Community Integration Specialist Team. My apologies. I'll be working closely with the Scarborough, particularly youth with higher support needs. Thank you. Happy to meet everyone today.
Thank you for being here, despite we've had a number of situations of our staff having the same sort of symptoms and losing their voice as you. So appreciate you being here. Still waiting for Louise. Would you like to maybe, let me see. Yeah, share the slide. That's what I'm thinking. I have one person in the waiting room, but it's not Louise, and I'm holding the spot for her. So
maybe I can start with just an overview of the asylum and refugee work that we've done so far, and some of the activities being done, and then, or actually we can start from the first slide about WCG. I think that would be a good thing to start with. Somebody asked a question about WCG, and Ryan, very good. You explained it all very well. It used to be West Coast Group, but now we are beyond the West Coast Group. We have been delivering employment services for over 29 years in British Columbia, Alberta, and we were selected as the prototype SSM for the prototype in Peel in 2021. It was a competitive process, and after that we won phase 1 and got York region. In phase 2 we secured Ottawa, and now we're very proud to say that we are the SSM for Toronto catchment. Here is our manifesto in front of the screen, and our CEO Tanya Bennett, she talks very nicely about this manifesto. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do justice, but as a team, sorry, I can see your screen. As a team, we were developing what motivates us to come to work and what is it that really gets us going. People from WCG team, they came up with different words, and based on that, we developed this manifesto. We really take pride in the work we do and really want to make a difference in the lives of individuals and move them towards employment in Ontario. We're also part of APM Group, which is an Australian-based company. Next slide, please, Ryan. You've already met the team. Most of us introduced ourselves. You'll meet Louise very shortly. She's our transformation director, and some may have already seen her at different events and community or events that we've been doing at WCG virtually as well as in person. Deb Charles, she's a director of strategic partnerships, and Jane Garner, she is our operations director in Toronto. I'm sure you all will get an opportunity to meet with them, and they'll be joining future sessions as well. Rana, if you can just switch and move over to the asylum slides, please. Next slide, please. So just to give you an activities overview, very quickly, we learned that refugee crisis and the refugees that were coming into Peel hotels were growing. The shelters and the hotel space, we needed to do something fairly quickly to make sure that people were getting attached to employment whilst they are looking for housing and other life stabilization pieces. We currently work with 5 hotels in Peel region and 1 hotel in York region. We've partnered with Polycultural Immigrant and Community Services as well as Newcomer Services Peel. Our service provider network in Peel, we're over 23 service providers, and most of which work on settlement side. Our multilingual EO service providers are on site to support clients with language barrier and register clients in employment services or refer them to the most appropriate services. We very quickly realized that by the time the clients find employment or by the time they're getting connected to employment services, they've already spent months and years in some cases just trying to find the right pathway. So going by the strategy of getting to clients where they're commonly at, so whether it be hospitals, libraries, schools, we want to reach out to client before they reach us. We also work very closely with our municipal partners, with Peel region, York region, and through the support of SA, social assistance case workers, we also try to do a lot of sessions and training for those clients. We have bi-weekly check-in meetings with asylum hotel managers and bi-monthly meetings with IRCC to discuss hotel operations. We also provide bi-weekly data updates to MLITSD. Just to go back a little on the hotel services, so our EO service providers on a rotating basis, we're available on site. And through the asylum hotel managers, they book the clients into service with EO. So that way, clients are seeing EO services on site every day. They come and ask questions. They come and ask about what are some of the resources available. And when they're ready, they are inducted into or registered into EO services. It's always client's choice. That is the first thing. So if the client has heard about Costi services or has heard about Dixie Bloor, the client would be referred to that organization that is most closest to them, where they speak the language, because we understand culturally it is important to connect client to where they culturally feel safe. We've created and distributed promotional material translated into 4 top languages. I just see a question in the chat. When we created and distributed promotional languages, we did that in partnership with Polycultural, and the 4 top languages that were developed were Pashto, Dari, Spanish, and I'm forgetting the 4th one. We also update our language register to include EO services languages. This just ensures, again, seamless referral to clients with an EO EC that speaks the language. So if somebody has a specific requirement, we would connect the client to that organization which has a staff that speaks the language. Next slide, please. We also do orientation sessions for clients in various languages, and again, Pashto, Dari, Spanish being the top ones. And we offer targeted job fair for clients through our employer engagement team, which is on the SSM level and more strategic. We identify employers that are willing to work with refugee clients. We talk about and we promote hiring refugees in the sector. And we offer targeted job fair for our clients. In the past 6 months, we've done 4 job fairs, and we've seen a great turnout. And also a shout out to our service provider network, because we're so into the community. Anytime there is a job fair happening, we open some slots for just refugees and newcomers, so they can come and they can participate and meet with employers. We also have collaborative meetings with other SSMs. So it's not that one SSM is working in silo. We work with other counterparts, such as FedCap and Circo, to offer supports for clients who are transitioning from one catchment to another. And we've seen in some cases where hotels are full or at capacity, they're transitioned to another catchment area. And we don't want to lose clients, and we don't want clients to feel that they're being bounced or they have to repeat the story. So we're really trying to align all the messaging and to make sure that clients are seamlessly moving from one catchment to another, and we take care of things in the back end. And we're also working with our ministry to ensure just the systems pieces are all aligned as well. We also provide financial supports to clients to remove barriers to employment. And that is a piece that is for all clients, not just refugees, but any client that are eligible and active in the program. We do provide financial supports to remove temporary barrier to employment. I know you may ask a question around SA case workers or Ontario Works and Ontario Disability also provide supports to clients. So could they be double dipping? The answer is no, because it's now very much streamlined, where Ontario Works are providing supports to clients to remove life stabilization barriers, whereas through Employment Ontario, supports are provided such as transportation, short-term training, interview, clothing, etc., to remove temporary barrier to employment. We also make referrals to appropriate training and education based on clients' needs. Next slide. Some of the challenges and needs that we've identified based on the conversation with our EO service providers, as well as our partners at Region of Peel and York, Polycultural Immigrant and Community Services, COSTI, and Newcomer Center for Peel. I won't go into the detail. I know I'm talking to all the experts here, but if I've missed any, please do let me know in the chat. But primarily, a lot of times, the clients that we've served or are serving, we continue to see the same challenges faced by clients. So we do try to work around how can we connect clients to the right resources. So while they are looking for other supports, their employment can also continue at the same time. Next slide, please. Just another piece around how do we capture that data. So we are very much performance focused, and we are very much informed by the data that we collect. So once we started capturing information about refugees, we realized that we needed to really make sure that we have a robust system to capture information so we can plan our activities around the data that we have seen. So whether it be creating marketing material or inviting employers for job fair, it's all data informed. This is just a sample of, on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, you do see a sample of the type of reports that we collect. It's very extensive. We track hotels and shelters where clients are coming from, and we get that information from backhand from our municipal partners in terms of where the clients are currently residing, or if there has been an addition to the hotel or shelter. We see total client volume and how many of those clients are actually completing the intake process and getting inducted into the program. How many clients are employed. In our new model, we track clients that are getting employed 20 hours or more, but that doesn't mean that clients who cannot work 20 hours or more, or who are progressing towards 20 hours or more, they're not valuable. They're equally valuable, or if anything, we work more with those clients to make sure they're getting to their outcome of full-time employment. We track clients that are going in training and what type of training they are choosing. Client profile and demographics, so their ages, where they're coming from. Client ERFS, again, I shouldn't have used acronyms, but it's employment-related financial supports. So what type of supports, employment-related financial supports clients are asking for, and employer incentive, how many clients are, how many employers are hiring clients whom we are paying incentives. So we have brokered incentive program that if an employer is willing to hire a client, we can pay them to offset their initial training and onboarding. Desired knock code is National Occupational Classification. So this is what the client wants to do, and then we track what actually the clients are finding employment in. So it's not just getting clients into any job or precarious job. We really try to match the client with the industry that they come from. We do collect French-speaking clients portfolio profile, and we track other inclusion groups as well. If Louise is not here, I can go and talk about the inclusion groups.
I'm here now.
Okay, all right, Louise. I'll just complete my slide and then I can pass it over to you. So Brad, just go back one slide. And very, very good, Louise, just in time. I was wrapping up this. I talked about employment-related financial supports, but here are some of the resources available for eligible participants, that for eligible clients that they could avail. And it's not limited to this. It's really helping clients get into sustainable employment. So whether it be the need transportation or technology such as prepaid card, or the need work clothing, special equipment, work boots, toolbox, short-term training, it's really an exhaustive list as long as it matches with the needs of the clients. Thank you, and welcome back, Louise.
Thank you. This event is so popular. I couldn't get back in, so it was the screen was shaking. So I took myself out, and then it wouldn't let me back in. It was full capacity. So apologies for the slight blip. So thank you very much. You've heard from Salima, who's talking about some of the work that we've done across our other catchment areas and the data that we bring in to make informed decisions. But we recognise that Toronto is a very different catchment area, and I want to share with you the work that we're about to embark upon, and hope that you will participate in this to help us figure out how we're going to develop a more localized approach to our newcomer community. So my name is Louise Duncan. I'm the Transformation Director for WCG. This is my third transformation. Salima is on our fourth. So we, as Salima alluded to, we deliver across Peel, York and Ottawa, and we've recently just implemented in Ottawa, and we're going through this year in developing our approach for Toronto, and our Toronto delivery will start on March 1st, 2025. So I wanted just to take you through our approach and what we're intending to do and how we would like to work with all of you. We're very much a client-centered approach. So what do we need to do to ensure that we're focusing on every single individual that comes through, and ensuring that we have the support and services, and that we have staff that are capable to deliver across all challenges and people that will receive our services. We're very, very focused on engagement and listening, and I'll take you through what we're planning to do to really listen to you and to the clients that potentially will come onto our programs. We want to build a locally responsive system together. Our innovation is through collaboration with organizations like yourself and other networks. We focus on quality outcomes and high performance culture. So we're not just focusing on giving somebody any job. We want to make sure that this is the right job for them, or the right stepping stone for them to progress. And it's not just about putting someone into work and leaving them there. It's around how do we focus on ensuring that person progresses in work and sustains employment. This programme is very much focused on change management, and that's change management in the model itself. You know, I know there's been a number of changes that have happened over the last 20 odd years across Toronto, but we But this is quite a significant change, and we'll take you through some of these key changes. But that's a big change for our provider network as well, and so we are here to support that change and coach. We have an organisation who will be coming in to coach to the leaders of those organisations and really thinking about how they can bring their teams through this change and manage them and support them. Next slide, please. So this is our delivery model, which is we focus on 5 pillars. So our 5 pillars at the top are engage, explore, progress, start, and succeed. So on the left-hand side, as you can see, the pillar engage is the referral pathways that clients will come in, and there's various referral pathways. So you have our social assistance, which is a key referral pathway for us. Community partners like yourselves, so organizations who are delivering other services for those clients and partnering with them to have a referral pathway onto our employment service. The general public, so people can just walk into an office and receive support. And we also will have an online service. We have that across our other catchment areas, and that will give a seamless approach to be able to enter. So there's lots of different ways that they can enter. TRF and RASP are the government programs of, you know, when somebody becomes unemployed, they will automatically be supported to access employment support. So they will come in any way, and we also have a central call service centre who will identify the most appropriate services for that person to come on. So we will have a register of all our our organizations that are delivering those services. We will have a map of where they are, but also the languages that they speak. So if there's somebody that really struggling with English at this point, that they can come through, we can identify what's the most appropriate service through the languages they speak or the particular cultures of our staff. You know, a lot of our organizations reflect the communities in which they serve, and so we want to make sure that it's the most appropriate service for that individual. As Salima alluded to, it's customer choice, it's client choice. They can first and foremost make a decision on where they want to go, but if they don't know where, and that can very often be the case for newcomers, that we will identify somewhere that's more appropriate. And we have a lot who are, you know, they're probably on this video call already, but you know, that serve and are specialists in serving newcomers, in particular newcomers from particular communities. And then we refer them over to one of our employment services, and they will go through a common assessment tool. And this common assessment tool identifies how far someone is from the labour market. So there'll be a set of questions that will be asked by our employment consultants to the individual client, and they will and it will, you know, cover everything from their skills and their life and their, you know, the challenges that they face, and that will then stream them into a stream A, B, and C. And A is people who don't really need that much support, but will need a little bit of hand-holding through the process, or access to employment websites to access jobs. Or it might be if there are streams B, and those can often be newcomers who are highly skilled. So those that have the skills and support, but need a little bit of support of either recognising and converting their qualifications into a Canadian recognised qualification, or it might be just access to organisations that might be looking for newcomers, highly skilled newcomers from particular sectors. But Stream C is the majority of our customers, probably around 60% we're expecting to come through. And those are people who are really barriered. So this can be anyone from people with disabilities, and people who've come through justice system, newcomers who have come from war-torn communities and have the clothes on their backs, and that's it pretty much. And so those are people who are really, really barriered, and that's our main focus, is focusing on those particular clients. So we will identify what those challenges are through the Common Assessment Tool, and that will identify some of the areas that the client and the caseworker need to work on, and they will put together an employment action plan. And that employment action plan will cover everything from the type of work that they want to get into, what skills that they need, whether it's particular short-term skills to support them into work, or soft skills that they may need, and also kind of life things. So they might have, as I say, a disability, or they have health conditions, or they need access to housing and debt advice, or even food banks, and all the things that will restrict them from progressing into work. And we recognize that, particularly for newcomers, the first thing is not always just getting into work. It's looking at, actually, we need to access other services first of all, to ensure that they're settled and their family is settled, and then they can embark upon this work journey. So we'll identify a number of barriers, and how we will create partnerships with organisations that we can access those services to support and progress them into work. And once they've found work, we again can identify what are the things that we need to ensure that they're able to start their job. So it might be some workplace assessments. We need to do a workplace assessment for them. They may need some particular tools. They may need just to understand how to get to and forth from their job, like accessibility into like travel accessibility. They need a Presto card for a few months, anything that will help them ensure that they're able to start. And then there's a focus on how do we retain, because that's actually the real focus, particularly for people that are not from this country, that embarking upon a new life and also starting in a new Canadian culture. I know that when I came here, the Canadian culture is very different, and I can speak the language, so I can't imagine what it's like to be able to come in when you're struggling with the language, but also those particular other challenges as well. So we will support them, and that could be anything from access to mentoring or training employers and their staff in bringing someone in from another country, or it could be anything that to support them, or maybe some further skills support that they may need. On to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to show you this at the moment because it's but what this just basically, we'll share this slide out, and you can watch it in your own time. But this just talks you through. This is a little animation that talks through how we serve those clients. So it kind of brings that whole map into life of the engage and progress and so on. So I'll leave you to have a look at that once we've shared the slides afterwards. Next slide, please, Ryan. So I'm going to talk about the inclusion group strategy. So as you can see, we go through those 5 pillars, but those 5 pillars will be very different depending on the person that comes on. So we could have somebody in Scarborough who's a young person who who struggles with has substance misuse issues, or we might have somebody who's a newcomer that lives in Etobicoke that's 55 years old, that, you know, is just entering the country. They're very, very different journeys. So we need to ensure that we create journeys and that we have access to services that are able to flex to the needs of the individual. And we want to make sure that every single one of our providers has that support and access to be able to support their clients well. So the challenges we wish to resolve is ensuring that every organization and their staff involved in integrated employment services is really engaged for this and prepared for the change. That's the first thing. And ensuring that we've got an effective referral strategy that fulfills all our referrals onto programme. Ensuring, and the last two are really important for us, so that there's a consistent approach or a minimum standard approach to every single client, no matter what their barrier is. So they ensure the best, that everybody is receiving the best service across. We currently have 51 providers that are delivering employment services, and we expect to have more as we're going through a process to increase our volumes. So that to ensure that across all of our employment services that there's a consistent approach and they're receiving the best service, and that going to one provider is not going to put them at a disadvantage to another provider that they may that they could have had. And also ensuring that every client, no matter which service that they access, has the best chances of achieving their job goals and remaining in that job. Next slide, please. So this is, as you can see, this is below is the population of Toronto and the percentage makeup of the population. We are targeted as an organization, as an SSM, as a service system manager, to target particular inclusion groups, and we've committed to those targets, recognizing that actually there's a higher percentage of certain communities that we will support into work, and you can see that from newcomers. So we expect to have around, we're targeted at 30%. We expect that we will exceed that target, and also the racialized population. So those are our inclusion groups. So we have ODSP, clients with disabilities, the Francophone community, Indigenous communities, youth with higher support needs, newcomers, and racialized people. And so they're our target. We will support everybody, but these are particular targeted groups. And the reason for that is because they're the ones that are most barriered across the city. Next slide, please. So to ensure this best practice and consistency, we've created a framework that will support us to develop and design our programs to ensure that we are serving all of those communities and serving them consistently and serving them effectively across all of our providers. So we want to, our inclusion group strategy goals are that we want to serve and provide the right skills for every single member of staff across all of our Employment Ontario community to effectively progress their clients into sustainable work. We want to ensure that every provider has access to the right community services to progress towards work. And we want to ensure that every provider has a healthy network of appropriate organisations to refer into our services from inclusion groups. We want to make sure that every member of staff to confidently, effectively utilise employment-related financial support. So Salima talked about these, and these are, you know, funding attributed to each client that they can, that we want to make sure that they're being utilised effectively, and that they're being used to keep and progress clients towards sustainable employment. And finally, to provide access to employers and jobs that offer opportunities to marginalised groups. Next slide, please. So this looks like a very busy slide, but this is our, I'll just talk about some key points of this. This is our plan and our framework, and how are we going to co-design, research and co-design our services to ensure that that our clients will have access to all of those services, and that this is being supported. This is being developed within Toronto to be locally responsive to each of the areas and the inclusion groups that we're serving. So we have embarked upon quite an ambitious a program of how we're going to do that. So we have commissioned a research partner, and many of you will have dealt with them before. It's Blueprint. They're a fantastic not-for-profit research consultancy who particularly focus within our industry on employment and skills and supporting communities like newcomer communities in developing and understanding how best to serve those communities. So we're really pleased to on this collaborative partnership with them. So we've commissioned them, and the idea is that they will embark upon a huge piece of research, and we're just about to begin that. So they're going to be delivering client focus groups, staff focus groups. Our community integration specialist team, who are on today, are going to be conducting interviews with community organizations. And we're really going to ask and delve into really understanding, when we talk about those 5 pillars of engage, we're engaged to succeed. We're asking those questions. So we're asking across the communities, whether they're clients, staff and community leaders, really asking how can we effectively engage those particular groups? What is the type of messaging and marketing? What are the type of mediums that we need to use, whether it's particular social media or television or radio, that those particular groups seek information to come on to programs like ourselves. And what would make it attractive for those particular people to come onto a program like our, and what are the things that they're looking for? And then we move on to asking them around, you know, what are the barriers to coming on a program and also progressing into work, and what types of services would they like to see to support them? And then really understanding what are the types of things that we need to consider when we create an employer engagement strategy. So is it how do we effectively work with employers to access more vacancies for those particular inclusion groups? And then finally, what are the types of things that we need to consider, services and tools and support that we need to have in place to support those clients while they're in work? So that's the piece of research, and we'll be doing that until the end of September. Blueprint is then going to gather all of that information together and summarize it into each inclusion group and make some recommendations based on that research. And this will create a co-design pack. And then we will then be working with community advisory groups, established advisory groups, and also our staff who have lived experience to really shape what that journey is for across all of the groups. What are the types of services we need to ensure that we have in place? What are the types of agreements, referral agreements that we have to have? Who are the organizations that we need to have those referral agreements with? Where are there gaps in provision that we might need to buy in certain services, whether it's through employment related financial supports, or it is we are setting up a community investment fund where we'll be doing funding small pilot programs to look at how effectively to support particular groups and communities into work. And then so that co-design will happen over January and May, and then we will go through an execution phase from January onwards, and that will be ensuring that we have a set of tools and supports for all of our employment Ontario providers in Toronto to ensure that they're able to effectively support each and every one of those clients. We will have a marketing strategy that will be targeted very much at particular groups to attract them onto our program. We will have a set of training, specialist training to support our staff across Employment Ontario to more effectively support those clients. And we will also be informed to support our employer engagement strategy on how we will support and coach and access vacancies for all of those groups. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through this, a little bit about Blueprint. I've already spoken about them. Next slide. So this is some of our research activities that we're doing. So we will, for clients, we have 10 focus groups. We have 3 sharing circles, which are for Indigenous populations. We will be doing a number of surveys. So we'll have over 1,000 surveys, 1,250 surveys for clients. We have 7 staff focus groups set up. We will aim to have 250 staff surveys, and then stakeholders, which are all of the community organisations like yourselves. We aim to have, we're being way more ambitious than that. We're having about 100 interviews. We're hoping to achieve over September. We will have a number of surveys that we want to share, and also, again, we will have community sharing circles with key partner organisations. So this is just to give you the level and the scale of the work that we're doing. So we really want to reach out to everybody to get their view and their voice that will really help us be able to shape this this journey. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's just a bit around where we are already. So we've already had over 100 providers that have volunteered to support and participate in our research. And we're calling out today to ask you if you would participate in our research as well. We are shortly, our community integration team will be reaching out to all of you to ask if you would participate in our research. We already have all our client and staff focus groups set up. So there's quite a lot of work. We're also doing a piece of Blueprint is currently underway doing a piece of desk research, and we're looking at all best practices across the globe on how you would support particular groups. So we have a more strategic and evidence-based global research. And we also will be utilising more localised research as well to really make sure that we've got a very full and robust programme of support for each of those groups. Next slide, please. And that's it. So we're, so I think, yeah, sorry, Ryan, if you can go down. Yes, opportunities to engage. Great. So yeah, so over from now on, we our lovely community integration team are going to be conducting interviews and sending out surveys to everybody. We also, in particular, we're going to set up some focus groups, online focus groups with our newcomer with you all. So we're going to look at, you know, we're going to put them into particular areas of expertise. So we'll do a refugee one, so those organizations that are serving refugee communities, a health one, a legal services one, and also a skills. I think we're doing bridging programs as well. So we really want to hear your voice on some of the areas that are challenges or some of the opportunities as well. So we're putting these together over the month of September. Really hope that you will participate one way or the other, whether it's to do a survey for us or to have an interview or participate in some of those groups. We really appreciate it. And our response to you, you know, this is a two-way approach. So we're going to share this research with you once we've done it. So those that participate, we will share this, and we hope that this will help you as well with informing you to support the development of your services as well. So this isn't just us taking everything from you, it's we want to share this with the community. Next slide, please. So we're sending this out to you. We'll send this out to you shortly. But there's a QR code that on the presentation that if you want to just understand any update, to get some updates from us as we're progressing through the development of our programs, but also to include any future funding opportunities that we may have. We have quite a few funding opportunities that we're looking at over the next few months. So please subscribe to using that link, and we'll be able to give you updates, and you can look at if there's any opportunities for you that you would like to apply for. And I think that's it from me, isn't it? Yes. So Serna, I want to first of all thank you so much. Lastly, sorry, thank you so much for organising and giving us the opportunity to share this with your communities. We recognise that the local immigration partnerships are absolutely key to this, to us supporting supporting our newcomer community, both referring on to our programs, but also ensuring that we have access to the services that you provide. We've done quite a lot. We have quite a lot of data both in Peel and York, and we're seeing between 30 and 50% of our Stream C clients coming through as refugees at the moment. So, you know, as we recognise the absolute importance of working with you and ensuring that we're serving those newcomers effectively, whether they're asylum seekers or they're, you know, highly skilled economic migrants.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure this was very, very informative for everybody in the session. I've learned a lot myself. We can take questions, but maybe before we do that, I know that the community integration specialist introduced themselves at the beginning of the session while you were trying to get in, and I'm really sorry about that. And thank you for managing to get back in. I was wondering if it might be helpful to speak briefly about the sort of the role, if I've not missed it, that they specifically will have, because the way that you've assigned them is really by quadrant, and the Toronto local immigration partnerships are also organized by quadrant. So my understanding is that their role will be to really create those referral networks within each quadrant. Is that what the plan is?
Yes, so we recognise, you know, partnership is absolutely key for us, and so we have a team of our community integration specialists, and their role will be exactly that, Serna. So it's ensuring that we have effective referral partnerships of referring onto our services, but also ensuring that we have partnerships to refer out to the services that they provide. As you said, Serna, we have it's per quadrant. We recognise the importance of localization, and we want them to become real experts in their area, and that they've developed, and you have one point of contact that you can just come to each of them to instead of having to sort of navigate all the employer engagement, all the employment services across that quadrant. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible for you to engage and partner with us. So that will be their main responsibility, and you know, they can participate in any groups or networks that you have that you might want them to participate in. This is their role. We want them to be the face of the service system manager, and I'm really excited about them all. They're super talented. They come from such a great background. There's a real mix of background. They have worked either in employment services or they've worked with particular communities. So yeah, so I want you to become best friends with them all.
Wonderful. Well, I'm claiming Ryan for the Toronto North Local Immigration Partnership. because I believe you're the community integration specialist for Toronto North. So I would love, I mean, I think this makes sense for every community integration specialist is to be member of their local immigration partnership. And Salima's put the contact information. Thank you so much for each of the community integration specialists into chat. So I guess the question is, you know, like what's the best way of connecting? You probably don't want 100 organizations calling you and emailing you in one day. But, you know, that's in terms when it comes to connecting with newcomer organizations, that's something that can be coordinated through the local immigration partnerships, the information sharing and the sort of service coordination piece. We would be happy to support with that. So that was, thank you for clarifying that role. And then another question I had is, we brought this up in our earlier meeting. As this whole landscape changes, right? And the landscape is complex. EO is part of it. And it is an integrated employment system that we're working towards. There are parts of, there are certain programs and services that are sort of outside of it, even as it pertains to employment, like bridge training, I believe, is remaining outside. And those were some of the questions we received in registration. So that's why I'm bringing them up and wanted to clarify. And then the other piece is, I think Canada Ontario Job Grant is also remaining outside of EO. I guess my question is, with Toronto, one of the things that's unique about Toronto are these employment skills training programs that are specifically for Ontario Works recipients, which now are on pause or until they are redesigned somehow, right? So, and one of the slides I shared earlier, I believe that's $24 million that was sort of, that's what we were told back in June 2023, that was used by Toronto Employment Social Services for multi-year contracts with community organizations that provided skills training specifically for for Toronto, for Ontario Works clients. And my mom went through that program actually when we came to Canada 30 years ago, and she became an early childhood educator as a result. So I get how that works and that a lot of newcomers actually benefit from those programs. So if you could speak briefly, just, I know that things are in flux and nothing's decided necessarily yet, but if you can provide any additional information about what might be the fate of those programs, and in some cases, organizations that pretty much that's what they do, and how that transition might happen.
Sure. So I can speak to so some of the things that we're doing. We've been working with TESS quite closely on, you know, recognizing that they have a number of their services that finish at the end of the year, and we want to make sure that if there's anything that has a employment focus that and will serve us, is there an opportunity that we can perhaps funding, and we've been working with the ministry as well on, is there an opportunity that we can move some of our funding around to support that. So we will have for all the purchase of employment services, POS, that comes to a close at the end of the year. But we have agreed with both TESS and with the ministry that we will have a program for around 1 or 2 years to begin with, that will be that will support, that will be kind of POS type programs that we're putting out for opportunity to the POS providers. So we did this. We've been sharing that with the POS providers, that will be what we would kind of see as a feeder program onto our employment services. So those particular clients that, as you say, Serna, that might not be just ready to get onto a full-scale employment program, they need a little bit of engagement and support at the beginning, and that's the program that we'll be sharing. So we're sharing that with the POS providers over the next few weeks. we've also been sharing with POS providers and with our Employment Ontario yesterday to take them through the full end-to-end service, because you know with the legacy programs we need to double our volumes, so that's our target, which is quite ambitious. That's currently being delivered, so we're bringing on double the amount of people and clients that are to support them into work. So that's why for the first 2 years, in order for us to build that momentum and that the numbers of the volumes of clients coming through onto our services, we have this kind of preparation for employment services. That's what we're calling it, and it will be particularly for POS providers. With access to skills support, we can still access a lot of the other skills funded programs and IRCC funded programs. So that's why it's really important for us. You know, the idea is that, you know, our job is to ensure that that's why it's called integrated employment services. It's to integrate with the current services that are available. So that's why it's really important for us to understand what the landscape is and how do we create those types of partnerships. Salima, I don't know if there's anything that I'm missing. Do you want to add at all?
Sure. I was just going to put in the chat what are some of the programs that are retained by MLI, TSD, and Sarna very well. You mentioned some of them. So MLI, TSD will continue to manage Skills Development Fund, Better Jobs Ontario, Literacy and Basic Skills, Canada Ontario Job Grant, and Bridge Training Program. An apprenticeship is also ministry retained. Some of the employment program that has transitioned to SSM will include our EU Employment Services, Youth Job Connection Summer, Supported Employment, and OEAS, Ontario Employment Assistance Services, as well as MCCSS employment program, which includes OW and ODSP. But as Louise mentioned, it's an integrated services. And if a client is deemed eligible for a program that is offered outside of SSM realm, they will be referred to the most appropriate service. So we're just trying to make sure that it is keeping client at the center of all services that is provided. So truly it's EO's responsibility to make sure that clients are connected or referred out to the most appropriate training program or the organization.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. We do have questions in chat. So I will ask a few questions that are currently in chat, but I would also like to open up the floor for folks to unmute themselves and ask questions directly. So if that's okay, I'm going to start from sort of the bottom up, so the most recent question, and we'll go to some of the older questions. So in an initial meeting, we heard that organizations would get incentives for overachieving their targets. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we have our finance model. I mean, we're just about to release our finance model, but it's a payment for performance. So if somebody stays, if you move somebody into work, then you are incentivized at certain points of them remaining in work. So the focus is very much on ensuring that you're sustaining people in work up until 12 months. So you will get a payment, an incentive payment every time that you, and Salima, remind me again, it's 3 months.
12 months, 1, 3, 6, and 12.
3, 6, and 12 months. Yeah. So if somebody remains in work at that point, they will be incentivized. At this point, we're not able to share our finance model until we share that with the rest of our employer network. But yeah, that's the main incentive.
Okay, fantastic. Great questions are coming in now. I'm really happy to see that. So keep them coming, folks. Going back to the purchase of employment service, there's a question about whether the new funding through the preparation for service stream will be comparable to what is currently being spent on those programs.
Yeah, we're still in the process of planning that out with both Tess and the ministry. So we'll be able to share that in the next few weeks. We can't answer at this stage.
Perfect. And here's another question. Can you talk about if you have a framework to measure outcomes such as employment success rate, retention rate, client progress? What are some of the changes in, I guess, the framework used to measure those?
Salima, do you want to answer that question?
Sure, we have a very robust framework that measures outcome for clients, and based on that, it goes into performance-based funding. So we have a lot of reporting that is based on clients' volume, how many clients they're actually moving successfully into program outcome. We have a dedicated team of contract managers that work very closely with service providers and guide them through the process. We also have star rating system, which really gives more in-depth information and outcomes for the clients that are progressing, and each service provider will be given targets that they have to work towards. And as we get more and more into the program, you will be hearing more about it. But rest assured, we do provide a lot of data, a lot of tools that really guide service providers to move towards an outcome-based model. And as Louise alluded, we do have performance-based management, which is based on retention for clients. So how clients, it's not about just getting a client a job and then forgetting about them, but how do we make sure that we're connected to the clients so they are moving towards sustainability and eventually getting out of the welfare system. So yeah, just to answer your question briefly, we do have a framework to measure outcomes and success rates.
I think one of the other things that, I mean, we've got a lot of data now from Peel and York that we're able to, and we shared this with the provider network yesterday, some of the key things that we know someone's more likely to get into work if they do these key things. So we know at every stage from the data that informs, you know, we know exactly how to more effectively move somebody into work. And you know, and so we're able to share and coach the network and being able to put that into their program so that they can ensure success.
Great. So sounds like guidance and working on it collaboratively with information from insights and evidence. That sounds good to me. There are a couple of questions related to employers. So currently, within one of the Employment Ontario programs, the question asker indicated that they're struggling with employers coming on board, and that the employers, the feedback they're getting is that it's much easier just to hire international students. And the other related to that is, does WCG have a strategy to involve employers and educate them about the upcoming EO transformation and its benefits too?
Yes, yes. In a word, yes. I mean, I think one of the really the big advantages of having this service system manager model is that we're the one face of and represent the rest of our provider network. So if you particularly have a large employer who has services across Toronto, or even anybody, you know, instead of having to constantly engage with 51 providers or try and navigate the engagement, which can be often very, very complicated. And we don't, you know, just to stress, if someone has a great relationship with a current employer, we do not want to mess with that. However, what we can do is support that organization to ensure that they're serving that employer best. So, you know, if they have 20 vacancies and that employment organization can only serve half of them, then we can support our provider to be able to access other clients to ensure that they're getting 100% without that affecting their relationship with the employer. But what we will do also on top of that is we have an employer engagement team that we're about to recruit, and one of the things that we're looking at is working with employers to access services for marginalised communities. You know, working with TESS to understand some of those planning applications, those planning decisions, and accessing those agreements. You know, we can fulfil some of those commitments. Working with the Toronto Community Benefits Network, you know, organizations like that, in that they're tracking, so that, you know, they're tracking and keeping people aware of those commitments. We can actually offer support to those employers to ensure that they're they're serving, that they're accessing the people that they should be, and also working with organized, you know, we're looking at things like, you know, organizations that have won awards for diversity, you know, across Toronto, and talking to them about, actually, you know, that we can serve you. So it's making them aware of that this service exists, but we can create and support employers to access and to have better pathways. You know, how do we link that up with some of the skills that they may need, and putting together some tailored pathways for particular big programs. You know, we have FIFA jobs that are coming out. We're talking to Tess about that. FIFA 2026, for those that aren't soccer experts, you're about to have a World Cup happening in Soccer World Cup. It's very close to my country. And so there's a lot of jobs that are going to be happening in Toronto. We're talking to Tess around how do we get access to those jobs. We're talking to Tess also around how do we access City of Toronto jobs for all our community, our networks. They have a number of programs that serve particular marginalised communities with both work placements and jobs. So we're doing a lot of work around, actually, how do we widen that net? How do we coach our employment Ontario providers to access to do local employer engagement as well? So again, that's, you know, we're a support to our provider network, but we don't want to involve ourselves where it's not necessary. But we do recognise that, you know, we need to widen that net to ensure that employers are accessing groups that they may not often traditionally have accessed.
I love this personally. I just have to say that because I think a lot of people on this call will recognize that there has been historically a lot of fragmentation in the employment service delivery system, and sort of like not really helpful competition.
Yeah.
Sometimes among service providers. So what you're talking about sounds like bringing this level of bigger picture and working more collaboratively than we have been able in the past, given the framework we're operating under. So that's just my quick response. And I've been in the sector for 20 years, so this is really great to hear for me. But I know there are challenges, and we've heard about challenges of the change and transition from other municipalities. We have a few more questions, and please keep the questions coming. We have another half an hour, so this is, like somebody asked, really meant to be an opportunity to ask those questions. You talked about some of the trends that are impacting the job market, and that are both opportunities and or challenges for delivery of employment programs. So there was a question about that. I think you answered it. If there's more, please feel free to add. And then there is another question about, what do you think is the most effective way of doing outreach? And I think this would apply to both clients, so outreach to clients, because you said doubling the volumes. So I heard that. What do you think is the most effective way to get that additional volume in?
Sure. We actually did we did a presentation yesterday about looking at our data about how people come through, and you know, the biggest number of people that are coming through, it's over 50% of our clients is through word of mouth and through, turning up at offices, rather. And I think that lots of our Employment Ontario providers in the past have gone, oh, we'll get them all through social assistance. And actually that's a lot less. So, we'll be responsible for the social assistance. Salima is particularly, she's leading on that. So having agreements with the municipality, with TESS and ODSP on how we will access having referral agreements and targets for each of those offices. So we're doing a big piece of work on that. But with the communities themselves, word of mouth is the biggest. When we did our research last year in Ottawa and also in York, that's the thing that comes out every time. And what that means is actually it's people who have already been in the program. So, if they've had a great experience, they're going to tell other people. But also it's, particularly for the newcomer community, it's that level of trust and who they trust to tell them or give them advice. So one of the things we wish to do is work with, really grassroots organizations to work with them on how do we refer people onto our program. And that might mean, that we co-locate with them. It might mean that we coach their staff. It might mean that we put on kind of like workshops to encourage people onto our program. One of the things that we're really keen on doing is doing a lot more on co-location and, itinerant services. So going out, we were looking at some of the neighbourhood improvement areas. I know that United Way have these community hubs, and we want to be part. We're talking to United Way about, can we be part of that? Can we sit on those services? But also the the settlement services. We're really keen to come in and support you as a settlement organisations. How do we bring in people from your services? Is it that we come in like every Wednesday and do a session, or we do some online events, or we want to hear from you how best we can work with you, what you need to, and this is part of our research, in our interviews that we're doing over September, is really understanding from your point of view, how best can we serve you to be able to access your clients onto our services, so that we can build that into our design.
That's excellent. I actually have a follow-up question to that, because I spent many years in frontline and also within settlement organizations providing sort of pre-employment services to clients. And whenever it was time to refer them to Employment Ontario, I sort of hesitated because I never knew what would happen to them once they went, right? And so is there going to be any sort of like a feedback mechanism where if I'm referring to Employment Ontario, I can sort of like, not sending them to sort of a portal and then to be lost and like in the big system, but a sense of like feedback for the people who are referring to on how the client's progressing?
Yes, I mean, we can do some great stories. We can tell you about some of the case studies, but I think also, sorry, someone's just calling me. Also, it's all about that I think the most effective, somebody, just to continue that question around what's the most effective way of referring people onto our programs and doing outreach. It's that relationship that each of you will have with the, whether it's our community integration specialists or the individual offices that you're working with, is really having that building that trust and that relationship, so that you have somebody coming in to talk about those services. And talk about some of the clients that that we've served before. Salima, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I love that question, Sarna, because I work very closely with our municipal partners in Peel, York, and Ottawa. And one thing that we hear from our network, as well as SA caseworker, they just all want to work for the benefit of the client. And if you don't have that collaboration between EO and OW or ODSP, it's going to be difficult. We have systems and we have processes in place where if OW caseworker refers a client over to EO and they're not contacted within a certain period of time, we have processes in place that really we action those processes very fast. Our commitment is to contact and book client into an appointment within 5 days of receiving the referral. If the client is not engaging, and we very well understand the client group that we are working with, we're not oblivious to that. We know these could be difficult clients sometimes to engage with, and life happens, and we're very cognizant of that. We just want to work with the client. And if the client does not show up for an appointment, we reach out to EO, to OW caseworker, to case collaborate, and really provide those wraparound support so the client engages in the program. We're also in the process of hiring our team of SA relationship specialists. So they will be localized, working with our EO network as well as local OW ODSP offices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of great information coming out. I'm going to give Aline the floor. There are a couple more questions and actually, Aline, I have not asked you a question yet about the number of French clients that participate in their activity. So feel free to include that, but go ahead with your question and then I'll address the question from the chat after.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Aline Merlet. I worked as outreach worker from 2010 to 2015 at the Francophone Center. Then I got promotion, and since 2015, I'm a team lead at Centre Francophone GTA in Newcomers. As I understand that a WCG, part of APM group, right, is a Canadian subsidiary of the international IPM group, a global human service based in Australia, right? Is that my understanding? Okay,
Yes.
that's a great news, actually. And I would like to know if there is any French stream in your research, in your participation, just like dedicated to French communities, because we're sort of, I would not say, but we are marginalized by the language. Well, not many of us, not only 5% of French-speaking population in Ontario, including people born in Ontario as a French speakers. So for us, it's very important to know how we're going to be supported and how we can collaborate with you. I will certainly share your information with my supervisor, who is manager of Newcomer Services. I don't think he's present at this meeting. That was my question about your French-speaking agenda.
Yes, of
in
course.
non-French-speaking province.
Yes, so we have that's a great question. We have that's one of our target groups is the Francophone community, and that's what we're doing our piece of research on. We have Toronto is a French designated catchment area across the whole of Toronto, so we need to ensure that our services that we have access to all our services in French. So all our material will be in French. All our support will be in French. We will identify the most appropriate service for our Francophone community. We have 2 French providers that currently are on our program. So we have Collège Boréal and Centre, and please forgive me, Centre Francophone de Grand Toronto.
Grand Toronto, it's my center.
Yeah. So
right.
so there are our providers currently. So
okay.
if people wish to seek services in French, then we have specialized services that already deliver for that. So yes. So in a word, yes, that's one of our target groups.
That's too bad that my colleagues could not be present here, from my colleagues from employment services, because we do have employment services, like we multidisciplinary center, I think you know, legal clinic, mental health, settlement, employment, and housing team. So we have multiple teams.
Yeah, we visited.
That's good that you're already good.
Yeah, we visited your operation a few weeks ago, and I was highly impressed by your services. So yes, we will be leaning on your services for sure for our Francophone community.
Were you in downtown or in Peel region?
No, I was in downtown.
in downtown. Because there is a Peel region also,
Yes.
like the portion of our center, and there's a Scarborough services too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and you're a provider of ours in Peel as well.
Okay, yeah.
And
Thank you so much.
just to touch upon you alluding to the fact that we're a global organization. So yes, we're a Canadian company, but we also are part of a larger network called APM, who are Australian. And as you can tell from my accent, I've come from our sister company in the UK. And the reason why there's a real international perspective, because we learn from each other globally. So, you know, one of the things that we've been doing that we've learned from is our German organization has delivered a pro bono service for thousands of Ukrainian refugees coming over the border into Germany. That we've been working with the German government. So there's lots of things, and we also, you know, work across all three of the continents anyway, across Europe and North America and Asia as well. So we have a real perspective, particularly with the newcomer community as well, that we're learning from.
That's great, because that's great global learning.
Yeah.
That's really good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Aline, for the question, and Luis and Salima for answers. I'm going to go through a couple of questions we still have in the chat. So given the new immigration policies limiting the employment of low-paid foreign workers, and maybe if you're aware of what those policies are, great. If not, we can clarify. It is anticipated that employers will increasingly seek subsidies from Employment Ontario to fill their workforce needs. These policies were implemented to encourage employers to prioritize local hires, such as newcomer and youth, and to promote more ethical hiring practices. With those policy changes and the EO transformation, what measures are in place to ensure that employers are leveraging these supports in an ethical and responsible manner? So I think in the old system, we've all heard of employers who sort of have a revolving door of subsidies and are not really providing that retention and sustainable employment. So I think that's what this question is driving at.
Yeah, and this model, the beauty of our model is focused on job retention and to stop that from happening. So, you know, our focus is very much around how do you is targeting people into long-term jobs. So it's not just getting a job and ticking a box and never hearing from people. It's around actually how do we work with the employer community, and we work with the client to ensure that they retain in those jobs. You know, we this kind of cancels out all of these types of kind of nefarious practices. You know, we will not accept employers who are just looking to recruit somebody and take the money, and then when they drop out, then you know, they look for somebody else. We wouldn't work with employers. You know, we will that it doesn't fit our ethics, and also doesn't fit the program itself. So the good thing about the incentive for both our employer community and also our employer support community is that it's very much focused on marginalized communities. So our employer our employer providers, Employment Ontario providers, are incentivized. They get greater financial incentives if they help those that are more marginalized or in the stream C, and they also be incentives the longer that they move somebody into work and they retain in work. So those two areas are incentivizing the right practices and culture.
That's also good news. Thank you so much. Here's another question. This has been a very informative session, and it is helpful to see the framework EO service delivery model through a behind the scene of the service delivery. However, when considering to refer a client to EO through this new model, What is the narrative to share with clients? What should they expect as a service user? It can seem at times that clients have to go through too many loopholes, and this may affect their perspective on accessing the service. And I think this is a great question about, you know, what do you tell the client to keep that engagement and buy-in into moving on to the next stage of getting services?
Great. This is all part of the development with our research. So we're going to speak to clients and ask them, what are the things that you want to see in a program? You know, how do you want to be? How do you want the information given? You know, one of the learnings that we had from York is that we have all our promotional material in like 8 different languages across our because we understand that actually people are more attracted when they hear it in their first language. So we will certainly be doing that. And so in terms of the language themselves, we'll ensure that that captures the communities in which we're hoping to attract. But also this research will inform how we, how do we give that information? What are the things that will attract somebody on, and how do we sell that? Sell those services, and also how do we do it in a way that's simple to understand and isn't complicated. So that's what we'll be developing over the next few months as we learn from our clients and from staff that serve those people. And that's why we want to reach out to you guys and understand understand from your perspective how best we are to message, to attract people on, and to support them all the way into sustainable employment. I hope that's answered your question.
That's great. Here's another question that just popped in. What kinds of supports are you offering newcomers to join your focus groups? Good question. We know newcomers have barriers and issues just in terms of time, access to technology, etc. Are there any honoraria, interpretation, translation, accessibility supports?
Yes, that's already been set up. So we had a financial incentive that every client that is participating in our focus groups are being paid for it, and also ensuring that we've got access to childcare and support, transportation support as well. So that's already all set up. Yeah, so that's what we've done.
We love that. Newcomers don't often get that special.
Yeah.
It feels like considerate treatment. So that's amazing. Thank you.
Well, exactly. I mean, they're spending nearly, I think it's going to be like 90 minutes per focus group. We want to ensure that we're paying people to participate in it. You know, they're giving us great value of their insight. We want to recompense them for it.
And those are in person?
For the client ones, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Another question. Some EO locations are currently very effective at serving clients virtually. What percentage of in-person services are you aiming for, if you have?
I would argue that they're not. That our data shows that the more effective in supporting people into work is usually face-to-face, and we've got all the data to support that. So we will expect 100% of our services to be delivered to offer face-to-face services. So yeah, that there will be times when people do things online, but the most effective way of moving people into work is face-to-face, and that we've got all the evidence to show that.
All right, can't argue with evidence. So good, a great question though, because I think that means some changes to some workplace policies as well for people working in frontline roles, especially. There was a question about the work that you did with refugee claimants. What were the top languages to which you had the information translated for refugee claimants?
So at that time, we had translated into Pashto, Dari, Spanish, and I still can't remember the fourth language, but those four languages were identified just with the work done with polycultural immigrant services as well as our EO services on site. And we also delivered the same, the orientation session in the same languages.
Okay. Fantastic. I have asked you all the questions that have come in, but I would like to add one last thing at the end. If you can speak briefly about youth services. We know the youth unemployment in Toronto is high. We know that dedicated programming for youth is not going to continue in the same way. So what can you say about how youth will be supported through the, and especially newcomer youth who are a separate, if you've given any thought to that specific segment of the youth?
Yeah, sure. So we're not, I mean, the thing is, we can provide support in being able to effectively serve, but our provider network, who are specialists in those areas, and we had a big session about this yesterday, is do not throw out things that do not that work. If there's everybody keeps going on about this youth job connection services, or we're not supporting youth because youth jobs connection services are being obliterated. And to be honest, if there's things that work in youth job connection, you can still put them into your program. So we will have but we can still support clients to go through those programs, and you can create workshops and the support services to support people to design your program to align with those services that worked with Youth Job Connection. It's a very flexible approach. We focus, rather than having very specific programs, to focusing on the individual. So what are the needs of the individual? And this is what, this whole design of this framework is around understanding what the needs are with all of those types of groups, and how we can put in place support and tools for our provider network to access. But if there's things that our provider network are already doing that really works and is moving people into sustainable work, then don't throw it away, keep it.
That's a great message. I was around in 2010 when one earlier iteration of the transformation happened, and I remember that distinctly. We stopped doing everything because we didn't know what the new model would be like, and that wasn't a great approach. So yes, that's a great message. So on that note, I think we will start to wrap up. If there are any last questions, please put them in. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I have put in the evaluation form in the chat, but it looks like you don't have permission to fill it out. So I've just changed the permission on it, and I'm going to re-enter it in the chat. So please do give us feedback on how, to what extent the session met your expectations, and also what other questions you might have at this point. But I really appreciate the WCG team being here, doing a session specifically with focus on newcomers and newcomer needs. There will be follow-up emails from me and the Interlip ESD working group, as well as I'm sure you received some from Blueprint already to participate in research. And Louise and I are working on doing some focus groups specifically with newcomer service providers in different areas like employment, pre-employment, bridging, language, health, etc. So you'll hear about that as well. So on that note, we'll finish 2 minutes early, and I feel like that's great. We usually are late, so this is a fantastic. We were efficient, effective, and I think it was a packed and very informative session. Thank you again, WCG, for being here, and thank you to everybody who attended. Thank you for all your questions, and fill in the evaluation so we can use it to inform the next steps.